Next job. This one is going to be interesting. Can I highlight the rocks without getting paint all over Gaia herself? Well, I'm going to find out. We're using Administratum Grey for this stage. Now it's one of those scenarios where we get the brush in the paint on our alternative palette, and we just gently brush it over. Now we're doing as much areas of this as we can because we want to take away as much of that bluey colour as we can do. So it's like a greeny blue colour, the Inky by Darkness, a very dark turquoisey, tealy kind of colour, and we need to disguise that quite a bit. But I don't want the normal usual rock colour for this. I wanted something a little different, hence the reason I went for the Inky by Darkness. I could have gone with a normal grey, like Ashen Grey, or even black with a dry brush over a Fang, but that is just such an obvious colour scheme to use, so I shied away from it. I went with this. I know I'm going over with grey now, but the fact that the whatchamacallit, the fact that the base colour is actually that Inky by Darkness rather than black gives it a much more interesting effects than just black and greys and things like that. So, sorry, I keep losing my train of thought with this because I'm trying my best not to get any of this grey on the mini itself. So far it's working, but it only takes one slip and again, this is a heavy dry brush. I'm trying to get rid of as much of the, or tone down and disguise as much of the Inky by Darkness as we possibly can. It's just to give the what do you call it? Just to give this model something, another way of standing out other than being really big. We've gone for the interesting rock colour scheme. And the oops, don't know what I was going to say then. I started off with Andy and then stopped because my brain decided to go into what the hell are you talking about mode and can completely confuse me. Oh dear, I hate it when that happens, but hey ho. I hope I'm getting all of this on camera as I'm doing it, because I'm too busy watching where I'm putting the paint to where the actual camera is pointing. So if I have missed, of course I've like done any of this off camera, I do apologise for that. But you can see mainly what I'm doing, so hopefully you're still following along okay. And I think that should be okay. What do you think? Looking a bit interesting now. Okay, so that's that bit done. The next stage is what? What is the next stage? Oh yes, we're going to paint these two chains that she has around her wrists, and I don't need to go into any more detail. Warplock bronze, that's the one we're using. Let's get it on the palette. Always do this one for metal. It's a good enough one to do. Some people, it's one of those colours that I think it took over from Tin Bits, did it not? And that was one colour that people seem to find a Marmite colour. You know, they loved it or hated it. I was one of those that love the colour. It worked wonders for when you were doing metallics. I didn't paint anything just the Tin Bits, and I don't paint anything just the Warplock bronze. This acts as the base colour always for me for metals. Unless it's just a very small piece of metal, and then I'll just go over it with the colour I'm using. But if it's a fairly obvious bit of metal, like this chain for example, then I always like to do this because it gives a really good base. It gives the shadow in the crevices much better than a wash would. All a wash would do is make it all dull, and you would lose that metallic look. Whereas this, it gives it that metallic look, and you just expand on it with the highlight. And I've just noticed I've missed the thumb on that hand. No matter what, I miss something. Won't be one of my painting videos if I don't realise I've missed something later on in the painting process. Anyway, that's one chain done. Now the next one. And I love the fact that the chains are hanging loose. It gives it such a vast amount of movement in such a small piece of detail. Because it looks as though her arm, because this is waving around, it looks as though her arm has just moved in a certain way, and the chain is following on with the momentum of the arm movement. I really like it. Makes the chain part a little more fragile. I always find with things like this, it looks good, but if anything's going to snap on this model, it's going to be that bit first, if you get me drift. So you got to be really careful with them, but you know, details are details, and as I say, the devil's in the details. And I've just gone over the with this colour, so I'll just have to try my best to cover it up. I'm thinking that's a piece of the metal chain, even though it doesn't look like it. It might be something that was attached to the chain. Or it could just be the rest of that branch there. So I'll just go over that again with the brown, the dried bark, and that's Is that sorted? Okay, so with a damp brush we're going into Dryad Bark. To cover that piece there. Like so. And I need to go back into the Warplot bronze for this bit of chain here. It's not quite covered as well as I'd thought. There we are. So that's the chains done. Next we're going to be adding a little bit more. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but let's just get it done. Screaming Skull onto the palette there. Dryad Bark into the Screaming Skull. A little bit more. Dry off a little bit, and then anywhere that is upturned to the light, we will just waft over with this colour, and this will be our final highlight for the wooded area. Say wooded area, sounds like a clump of trees. I don't mean that. When I say wooded area, obviously I mean the parts on the mini that is wood. It's not going to take long to do this bit. I'm just going to take a bit of a keen eye to see where you've done and where you haven't. And that's that bit done. Okay, next I'm going to go a little bit more with the Lauren Forest and the Screaming Skull. I mixed a paler shade up here as well earlier, so that's going to be our final highlight for the dress. And we just and a few very fine lines on the minute. There's no need to go overboard with this, because if you do, you can tend to ruin what you were intending to do in the first place. All we have to do is just make sure that the bits that you really need to be brighter are actually brighter. again. We can disguise some of this mess here that I did earlier with this now. I wasn't too keen on the way that the first highlight went on at that part, but as I say, we can make sure that with further highlights it gets improved. There we are. And we'll just stay there with this. And I think I may actually do a wash over the dress after all. It will tie everything together. The next thing we're going to do is the chains. That's going to be with Stormhost Silver, because this is one of the minis I really do like for doing certain metal areas. So I'll add a little to the brush. Why have I got such a big brush? I don't know. And we'll just, as I say, gently, ever so gently, wipe over the chains with this, and that should be almost the end of this video. It has, as you may have noticed, been split into a number of videos. As I'm doing this, I've not a clue how many. I won't get to find that out when I've finished. There may be 3, there may be 4. But as I say, we'll find out as time goes on. Next job, I want to just I've just reminded myself, well, not reminded myself, I've just noticed that I've not done that thumb. So I'm going to go back into the Baneblade Brown, and I'm just going to go over that thumb there, that fingertip there. I'm actually going to put some more of this on the palette. And into that I'm going to put some, well, Screaming Skull. And what more Screaming Skull than Baneblade Brown, because this is the final highlight for the face. Put a bit too much Screaming Skull into that, so a touch more Baneblade Brown. Must be nice. Just going to rinse the brush off. And we'll get back into this colour. And we will go into just make sure that everywhere, as I say, that needs to be highlighted is highlighted. Anywhere that is raised and upwards, shall we say, if you want to find out where that will be, look down and you'll see exactly, oh excuse me, you'll see exactly where it should be. You can obviously make a little more bones about it if you wish and add the highlights to a few more areas that you think may make the miniature pop. You've got your own discretion at this. You know, you don't have to go exactly, you can please yourself to a degree. You don't want to be putting anything, don't want to be putting any highlights on the bottom of the mini, obviously, unless the lighting is going to be, you planning on is coming from below, and then that will be a completely different kind of highlight technique that we're doing. Haven't done anything like that yet because nothing I've done has the light coming from below. I've always tried to make it so the light is coming from above, because that's the more natural thing and it gives it a much nicer look as well. But there we are, that's it so far. A few minor things I need to do now. One of them is to highlight, give the final highlight to the rocks, and that's going to be done with Ulthwan Grey. Bang some of that on our palette, alternative palette, and rub most of it off, and we'll just go over the rocks where again you think the light is going to hit. If you're going to do what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, I can't remember. When you're doing this, make sure that you use, or for the vertical bits, make sure you use just downward strokes and don't do anywhere that is below or that you will think will be in shadow. So I'm not doing down there because that will be in shadow, but I am doing there. I'm making a priority of doing sharp edges because they will pick up the light. But I'm not going everywhere with this particular mini now. There's just one thing I want to do before I call this mini finished, and that is the eyes. We haven't touched the eyes, and as you know, with the gods, I've been using like a yellow glowing eye effect. With the Titans, I'm going for red, because if you remember with Kronos, the eye sockets of the skull of his skull are painted completely in red, so I'm going to do that for each of the minis, or each of the Titan minis rather. And all I need to do is just paint into the eyeball there. I'm not going to put an iris in. I'm just going to paint a red eyeball, and then outside of that, I want to see if I can do this. Add a little bit of that grey into it as well to make it a bit paler. I'm just going to go over this area, very watered down. And again at the bottom of the eye and around the top, and I'll go around the I'm going to the eyeball again and strengthen that red. That's there. There we are. That's put that to one side. As I said, I'll and go back into the eyeball, emphasize the red in the eyeball, and that is Gaia, except for one thing: Screaming Skull and going back into the red again, because I've just noticed that her tongue is visible. And I'll just make sure that you can just see a little bit of grey there around the top of her teeth. I'll add a little bit more of the highlight colour to her nose, her eyebrows. But yes, that is Gaia. All finished, at least for this video. Here we are. So, I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, as always, take care, God bless, and bye for now.